Today I'm going to do transition pictures for Jamal Khashoggi, who is the journalist and Saudi dissident and manager of a news agency actually as well, who was assassinated in 2018 in the Saudi consulate in Turkey, in Istanbul. And I actually didn't know much about him as a person. I know he is the nephew of Adnan Khashoggi, the billionaire tycoon, and also the cousin of Dodi Fayed, who was the guy who was killed in the car with Princess Diana. The two of them died together in Paris in 1997. Jamal Khashoggi, I thought, was simply, just from my cursory knowledge of the news, a journalist from Saudi Arabia who was murdered for criticizing Saudi Arabia. It's a lot deeper than that. He was very, very, very critical of Saudi Arabia and the guy who runs it, Mohammed bin Salman. Well, it turns out that there are many, many layers to this. It wasn't just that he said a bad thing and suddenly, he's dead. He spent years criticizing the Saudi government, which is something that isn't welcomed in a dictatorship. And in fact, Saudi Arabia's enemy, bitter enemy in the world, is Qatar, or Qatar as Americans call it, but Qatar. And the government of Qatar was supplying Jamal Khashoggi with information to level against Saudi Arabia when he wrote articles for the Washington Post. So it was a very, very tangled web. And what happened was that Khashoggi turned up at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October 2018 to get papers related to his forthcoming marriage. I think he'd been married 3 times before that. And this was his 4th marriage, maybe. But he went to get papers. He walks in and he never comes out. And there were rumours that he was dismembered while he was still alive. It's just gruesome. And I have to warn you that the pictures begin a little gruesome. The imagery is gruesome. So if you're not into this, if you're a little squeamish, as I am, and this is going to worry you, don't watch it. Don't get these images in your head. It's not worth it. But I'm just warning you now, all right? It's not an easy one, this. But it's interesting. So when I went into the pictures, the first image that came to me, and this is the gruesome bit, so plug your ears or fast forward or something, then we're over it, right? Was of a fine mesh. And if you've ever tried to push cooked tomatoes through a mesh to get rid of the skins and the seeds and everything, if you ever tried to do that, that was the image that came through. I did warn you. Right? That was the image. And when I found him, he was on the floor looking up at this, understandably disoriented, not even aware of what was happening or where he was. His consciousness was perplexed, totally blindsided by what had happened, as you can imagine. It's as if you went to sleep one night and woke up the following morning in somebody else's basement. And you don't know how you got there, or why you're there, or what this place is, or anything. It felt a bit like that. After a while, he got up and he looked around, and he may as well have been on the moon. This was so alien and so ridiculously quick, this thing. The transition. It's like, oh, I'm here. I'm sorry, where am I? What? He half walks and half floats up the passageway. There were vast slicks of what looked like grease or gunge, possibly oil, but I think that's a little too on the nose for Saudi Arabia maybe. But it was certainly slippery. And he could float over it, but had he walked, he would have slid all over the place. The fact that it was black suggested that he had been immersed in a lot of shady stuff. Not necessarily criminal stuff that he was doing, but probably investigating criminal stuff or exposing criminal stuff or unfairness, injustice or whatever. Because it was a real slick of this thing. And had he walked on it, he would have fallen over. It was this he was shedding. This he was escaping. This he had to step over in order to get where he was going. That was part of his ego self, his mortal identity. But his energetic body was able to float over this, which he did. What was interesting, really, about this, I think, was that there was no sense of him being expected. Which I don't quite get, because if there are no accidents in life and everything is part of a plan and we die when we're meant to, how come this was a shock to universal forces? How come they weren't prepared for this? It felt very empty, like you're the only person left in the world. There's no sign of life, there's no sound, there's nothing, there's no movement. That's how he felt. It was like, well, where am I supposed to go? There's nobody here to meet me? He sees the tunnel that I always see as symbolic of this transition process. And he walks up it with a sense that he is meant to go somewhere, that it's like a party in another room. If he only gets to where the room is, then it'll be full of people and whatever. But he's driven by this sense of, there's got to be something here, but there's nobody helping him. There's no winds at his back to help him. Which is very confusing. I thought we met our end according to some kind of cosmic timetable. In his case, nobody was there to greet him. And so he goes up this tunnel, and at the top, he gets to this chamber I always see where this dome is in it and whatever, this dome of light. Only here, for the first time, did I get a sense that some force said, oh, you've arrived. Oh, come on in. Very late in the process. But it's, oh, right, come on in. He had to leave behind all this goo and all the wretchedness that he must have been looking into in his life, or may have been involved in, I honestly don't know. But he had to leave all that behind. And it had soiled him in some way, soiled his energetic penumbra, or whatever the word is. You know, it had basically tainted his being by getting involved in all of that. And it was hard to let go. But once he got to the top of this slightly steep tunnel, there was the chamber. And there was the welcome. And in fact, I felt that same circulation of air, of warm, welcoming air, that I now relate to as grace. Saying, come on. We're glad you're here. Time to move on to the next step. And I was very surprised at how compliant he was. There was no resistance, no protest. I think he was just dazed, if that's even possible when you're in a consciousness state. He wasn't at peace at that particular point. He was just in a state of, okay, whatever, I'm fine, I'm going, yeah, just show me the way. And into the light he went and away. Not what I would have expected at all. No protests, no resistance, no, hey, hang on a minute, explain to me what's going on. How did I get what? I'm sorry? You know, that kind of thing. There was no resistance. It was just like, oh, sure, okay, here I am. Let's do it. Let's go. No point in going back. No way we can look over our shoulder and change all of that. Yeah, all right, I'm ready. So I didn't get any kind of comfort from it, or solace from it, or reassurance about the cycle of life. In fact, it left me more mystified than any of the others I've done. Where were these forces of grace the meet and greet of the other side. Where were they when he arrived? How could they have been taken by surprise? Equally, it's possible that he had to disengage from the evil and the horribleness of his final minutes, days, years, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know what his life was like, but he had to maybe detach from that before he could move on. And it was something only he could do. He had to consciously say, okay, I'm moving on. And I'm stepping over this slick of goo, of oil, of nastiness, whatever that was, in order to go on to the next stage. Very interesting. But left me with more questions than I had when I started, actually. Yeah. That was it. Those are the pictures. So make of it what you will. My feeling was that although he was Times Person of the Year in 2018 and received a ton of praise for his work and everything, my feeling was that away from all the praise and everything else that he got after he died for being a great journalist and being a rebel, he had dabbled in things that were not helpful to his longevity, was my feeling. That we may never know about. But he risked everything to tell his stories, knowing that it was going to upset people. I think he was very connected emotionally to the stories he was writing, viscerally. And when you know that what you're writing is going to annoy some very, very powerful people, I don't think you can go through life expecting it to be breezy and without comebacks of some kind, without some kind of retribution. And so I think he just paid a price for the kind of world he had decided to mix in. Horrible, really. A horrible end. And that was Jamal Khashoggi. Alrighty. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.